Yesterday, a father emailed and asked about specialization. He acknowledged that I've written a lot about late specialization, diversification of sports, and sampling a lot of sports at a youth level, but he wanted to know when his son or daughter needed to specialize in a sport to make it to an elite level, defining the elite level right now as to be a college scholarship athlete. And so my response, and there are some exceptions to this, but my response was basically, if a high school athlete has the potential, the athleticism, the skill, the coordination, the work ethic, the drive, the psychological characteristics, and everything else that it takes to make it to a college level, they don't need to specialize until they reach that college level. Because by definition, the players who make it to the college level, they're basically the top 1% of high school athletes. And so if a player, let's say, wants to get a basketball scholarship, and they want to play, run track and field in the spring, or they want to play football in the fall, or maybe baseball or soccer or some other sport, they can afford to spend that time playing a different sport because they're already a top 1% basketball player. So they're not going to drop from top 1% to top 50% by playing a different sport. They're not going to lose that much ground by spending 2 or 3 months of their off season playing a different sport instead of playing year-round basketball. So I think the elite athletes have the opportunity that they can play multiple sports and should be encouraged to. And so my example that I gave was, I have a friend who's a high school coach, and he discourages his players from playing multiple sports. He really wants the players to play only basketball. But 2 years ago, his best player is now playing Division I sports in a different sport. And so she was able to play both basketball, in her chosen sport throughout high school, and she probably would have earned a college scholarship in basketball as well, but she was better in softball. So she's playing mid to high major college softball, and she would have been at minimum a Division II scholarship basketball player. So a player with this type of talent can afford to play multiple sports because the time that she's playing basketball isn't going to prevent her from being a college scholarship softball player, and the time playing softball wouldn't have prevented her from being a scholarship basketball athlete. Now, I do think there are two considerations. One, there is a potential for injury. So if basketball is your number one sport and football is a sport that you enjoy playing, I do believe that there should be some consideration for what happens or what could happen by playing football with the potential for an injury. And then similarly for the softball player, she actually did suffer an injury in basketball that for a time earlier in her high school potentially could have put her college scholarship in softball in jeopardy because of her time spent playing basketball, where she, I believe, tore her ACL. And so that should be a consideration as well. If softball is your number one sport, basketball has the potential for an injury that maybe that could cost you a scholarship. So there is some consideration that needs to be given to that. And also I think there are some politics at the high school level that some coaches will discourage participation and even cut players or just not play players because they're not playing a sport full time. And so if you're an elite athlete, I think you have a little bit more power in that relationship, and you can kind of dictate your terms and, say, no, I'm going to play both sports. And if the coach puts down an ultimatum, maybe you don't pick basketball and you only play softball, and now the basketball coach has lost one of his best players. And so when we're talking about the elite athletes, coaches are hesitant to put down that ultimatum. I remember even when I was in high school, it seemed like the only players who weren't discouraged from playing multiple sports were the ones who were the best athletes, and everybody else was kind of discouraged from playing multiple sports. And so I think that creates a problem, because the ones who probably should be playing multiple sports because they're not going to be an elite athlete in any of the sports, so why not spend your time doing whatever's going to be most fun And if that's playing one sport to the best of your ability, great. If that's playing three sports to the best of your ability in each of the sports, great, because essentially high school is going to be the pinnacle of your athletic career. So why not play, multiple sports and earn a bunch of varsity letters and have as much fun as you can? But I think in that situation, some coaches might draw a line and say, look, if you don't come to all of our tournaments in the off season, I'm not going to keep you on the basketball team. And if you're not the elite athlete, sometimes you can't dictate those terms, and so you have to make that choice. And so I think often specialization in high school becomes a matter of almost a political decision for the average player, as opposed to one that's really made for other reasons, whether those are performance or developmental or otherwise. And so it's unfortunate. And hopefully coaches encourage players, if you have your sixth or seventh player that's never going to be a college athlete, why not let them play volleyball or play soccer or play softball or play football? What harm is it going to do? Maybe it costs you one game because they're, your seventh man is in the playoffs in volleyball or football and not there for your first game. Like things happen. It's not going to cost you a championship at the end of the year. If you lose that, your opener because your seventh man's playing volleyball. So I think there are considerations in terms of specialization that go beyond simply development and performance. But if you ask me, when do I need to specialize for the best of my development or the best to have elite performance, I would say you don't need to specialize before you get to college. At the earliest, I would say when you move beyond puberty, probably an under 18 team or a varsity high school team. That to me would be the earliest that I would encourage specialization. But really, I don't think specialization is necessary because the elite athletes, the top 1%, they can play multiple sports and still excel at that really high level to earn their scholarship. And everybody else who's not going to play a college sport as a scholarship athlete, there's no real reason to specialize for performance standpoint because you're not going to reach an elite level anyway, so you might as well play as many sports and have as much fun. And if playing one sport is what's fun, great. If playing multiple sports is what's fun, great. But again, from a development and performance standpoint, I don't see the need to specialize much before college, and I would encourage players to, do what they want, follow their path, and if that's playing multiple sports, great. If that's choosing to specialize, after puberty, because you really want to focus on one sport or for timing considerations, make the best decision for you as an individual and with some consideration for your team.